things of that nature, 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 things of that nature.
All right, so welcome in to the very first pod of that nature here from Natty State Sports, as it is the pod of that nature, because we're going to talk about things of that nature, because that's what Sam Pittman always talks about. So we're going to talk football and spring practice starting up tomorrow. So let's get into it. I am John Neighbors. It's Andrew Ellis.
Scotty Borderline.
Curtis Wilkerson.
That way I don't mispronounce them. So there you go. If you haven't known who we are, then that's a you problem. So either way, fellas, it's great to actually talk about football for a change. And having spring football to talk about and everything. But Sam Pittman, real quick, I know he had a press conference yesterday to kind of kick everything off. Anything that actually stood out of something that he said, other than, of course, things of that nature, and he'll be honest with us. Any other things like that?
I thought he performed admirably in the press conference. I thought there were some moments that you could tell he didn't want to talk as much about some of the departures from the team, and the
Arkansas
NIL
edge.
The NIL question kind of stumped him a little bit. But believe it or not, I was actually telling them before, I was like, I actually am glad that he kept it short on that. Because last year I felt like he would just word vomit and just talk too much. Like his press conferences were honestly tough to cover sometimes, because it's like he would just talk himself into a circle. But I thought it was overall good spirit from the head hog.
Well, man, we talked about it, beforehand. Like it would be nice to see happy Sam Pittman again, because he's actually he's a lovable guy, a lovable figure, and he can be funny and endearing and all that. But like last year, it was just bad presser after bad presser because the team was struggling so much. So it was kind of nice to see him in a good mood with a little bit of renewed optimism. His take on the Barry Odom stuff was hilarious, and he had some good belly laughs in there. So I don't know, it kind of made me happy. I left there feeling pretty good.
I'm just really happy that they're going in the morning during the spring. I think
that's, you ain't lying.
That's going a long way in saving my marriage. So shout out to Sam for that one.
By the way, his marriage is not on the rocks, so let's just make sure that's clear.
It's not, but if it was like mid-season where practice runs until 5:30 or so, daycare closes at 5:45, you can't get from the practice fields to Farmington in 15 minutes at that time of day. So, and then interviews after, it's just tough. So I like the morning schedule. That was apparently a bigger deal than I realized.
Dude, people would not stop
on
asking
Tuesday.
about it.
I'm just like, thank you. Yeah. And then let's just leave it at that. Like that's the
I thought it was pretty simple. Like,
that's
that's
the schedule. You got to work around these kids' class schedules too, because they do school. But yeah, Sam said he likes where they're at, but he also was self-aware enough to say, every coach in the country at this point of the year is probably going to say that, but thinks they physically look good. 7.5 weeks of training are done. It's time to hit the field and try to figure out who your quarterback is before you wrap it up for the summer.
Well, let's talk about the quarterback position, because we've mentioned it, I know, in my show, and I know you guys have talked about it too. We've written about it. First time in a long time that feels like there's a quarterback competition, but I don't know. I'm starting to get to the point to where I don't know if there is. Like, I really do. I think that they have their guy. But Sam Pittman was asked about both Jacoby Criswell and also Taylon Green and just where they're at, and here's what he had to say.
He's got a strong arm. I think that's the thing, and he's a guy you can count on work ethic wise and things of that. I certainly wish he was, will continue to get more vocal, and those leaderships by skills by verbally in being more vocal. But he's got a strong arm, and it'll be a battle there with those guys.
And Taylon Green, same question. What?
Taylon Green's outgoing. He's got a personality. Says what he's thinking, but not too much, if you know what I mean. He's not got a lot of respect from him coming in here and from the team, obviously from the coaches, but his work ethic and things of that nature. I think he might have a little advantage on all the guys because he ran a team, and so it may come a little bit more natural right now for him than everybody else at this point.
So hearing that from Sam Pittman, he's talking about quarterbacks. I think it's going to be Taylon Green, and you went into it a little bit more in depthly, but I just feel like this is the guy that Petrino actually chose himself. This is the one he wanted, the transfer portal. I know that they're going to have open competition. They're going to have the best quarterback win, and I feel like I can at least be confident that Petrino's going to choose the right guy because he's done a pretty good job of that. But also, that's what I think everyone's focus is going to be on this spring is just going to be like, all right, well, if it's Taylor Green, how good does he look? Or does somebody actually start pushing him too?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they look here in spring, but I think any advantage that like Jacoby Criswell had by being here for a year, it's wiped out now because there's a brand new offense and an offensive coordinator. So he had that in his bag, and now he doesn't. And you're right about Taylor Green being the handpicked guy for Petrino. We've been like up close and personal with him. He's a large human being. Like he's really tall. Looks the part. So I'm interested to see it. And I think you can read a little bit into some of those comments about, he's the guy who's ran a team before. And, going back to like the morning practices, they're also opening some of those Saturdays up. And a big part of the idea was like, well, we got a bunch of young guys who haven't played in front of fans before, particularly the quarterbacks. But Taylor Green has. And he made sure to mention that a couple times. So it just seems like there's a lot of boxes maybe they're looking to check, and Green kind of already checks all of those. So, we'll see how it works out.
And I mean, I feel like we can't ignore the fact that Taylor Green is the one guy on the roster, or at least at the quarterback position, that Bobby Petrino had a hand in bringing to campus, which just has to matter whenever you're coming to a situation where Bobby Petrino is likely going to pick the quarterback. Sam kind of admitted that yesterday, that Bobby he's almost going to defer to him in a lot of ways there. And of course he would. I mean, he's a great offensive mind, coached quarterbacks forever. And I think it's interesting, going back to what John said, like we haven't really had to cover a quarterback competition at Arkansas in a while. And I remember in years past, Sam Pittman was very point blank about it. Like when Felipe came in, he was just like, hey, this is our depth chart. If we need to change it, we will, but this is our depth chart. This is what it is. He kind of downplays the competition aspect, but I thought it was interesting that he has to acknowledge that they have to find their quarterback, but he also said he wants to figure it out before the end of spring, which kind of gives you like an indication of they have a decent idea.
Right.
They won't admit it, and they might not come out right out and say it, but I think it's probably a two-man race here, and I think there's one guy firmly in the lead, at least to start. Now, of course, spring ball starts tomorrow. Nobody's done anything real yet. We'll see how it goes, but I think I'm with you guys where reading between the lines and reading the tea leaves, it just feels like this is a Taylor Green situation. And I'll say this, when I met him the other day, I hope he didn't think I was weird because I was sizing him up a little bit. If you're gonna play quarterback for the University of Arkansas, I gotta get a look at you. Gotta get shook his hand, kind of. I think he's solid, man. They listed him 6'6", 225.
I believe it.
I think he was 210 last year at Boise State, or at least that's what he was listed at. He looks like a guy who's put on a little bit of that weight, and he's definitely my pick to win the dunk contest. We were talking about that the other day. Which football players would win the dunk contest? All of them. As soon as I saw Taylor Green in person, I was like, yeah, that guy can dunk. He can windmill. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, as soon as he came in here with Braun and who was the other guy? Oh, it was Andreas Paskey.
Yeah.
So they came in here, and we were talking over at our cubicles or whatever. I'm like, looked at Curtis and said, yeah, he's winning that dunk contest. No slight to Andrew Armstrong. Is this Arkansas's first quarterback competition since like Ben Hicks, Nick Starkel?
I don't see. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm discounting that. I ain't talking about. That's not quarterback competition. That's just moronic.
It's like to Andrew's point. It's been a while.
We haven't had to have Sam Pittman comment on a quarterback situation. We don't know what it's like. Sam Pittman answering questions about quarterbacks. Like we really haven't had to ask him about it a ton.
I think it's probably maybe back when it was like Nathan Dick, Casey Dick. I mean, Mitch Mustang,
and even that was like
Robert
not a
Johnson.
competition until like the last week of the season.
Yeah.
I think you could go as far. Yeah, Mitch Mustang, Casey Dick is probably the closest thing, and even that was that during the offseason, it wasn't a ton of a conversation. Like Casey Dick was kind of the assumed starter there. Might have to go back to the Robert Johnson era.
I'm eager to get eyes on. I think all of the quarterbacks. Does Criswell look a little bit different than what we remember him as last year? Taylor Green obviously looks the part, but I think looking into him after he committed in December, I think there's some questions maybe about accuracy. I think he was somewhere right around 60% in his 2 full seasons at Boise that he played. Looked at PFF, I remember downfield passing not great. I'm going to be interested in seeing like accuracy there, and then like when there are those. Like the 7-on-7 stuff, if we see the DBs against receivers and stuff, can he put the ball on the money? And I'm really, for down the line, interested in KJ Jackson.
Yeah, man.
That kid, like you look at what he's listed at on the roster, he's like 6'4", 220 plus. Like that kid,
it's a big
dude. He's on campus now, and he's probably your down the line guy, but he probably looks the part. His game's just got to really slow down for him. So hopefully he soaks up some stuff from the guys that are actually battling for this job, I think.
I love that you mentioned the 7-on-7 because that's one thing that Sam said that really excited me was that they've moved that period from 12 minutes to 20 at practice, and so hopefully they let us stick around and watch that part of it because that's some of the best stuff we could see. When we go out there and view practice, and they're trying to evaluate the quarterbacks, but also the receivers, running backs, the DBs, the safeties, all those guys. So that's some of the stuff that you don't usually get to see a lot of, and it sounds like maybe we will. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Well, just body language too. Of like, obviously we mentioned the receivers, the quarterbacks are going to be throwing to them. I'm just interested to see the vibes of watching these guys interact at practice, watching them interact with Petrino, their teammates, and they can downplay it as much as they want. That's a thing. Anyone who's been on a sports team, if there's a position battle, if there's whatever, especially at quarterback where you're viewed as like a team leader, those guys are going to have to assert themselves in some way. So it's going to be interesting. Who's out there being vocal? Who's talking to the receivers? Who's pulling guys aside? Like, I think it's time when you're doing a job interview, you got to put on your best. You got to pretend be all professional. I'm excited to see how Taylor Green and Jacoby Criswell and even Malachi Singleton or KJ Jackson, these younger guys, what do they do to kind of stand out, and just how does that play out? And I think we'll have a lot more answers to some of these questions in about a week or so.
And when Bobby was here, he did Perfect Thursday, right? During the course of a game week.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
First spring practice is on a Thursday. He's going to be on it from from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm hoping he drops some
better
MFs,
not be
man.
dropping anything.
Drop MFs. That's all I want to see. Because even with Petrino, and I think it's fascinating, because when you think of Bobby Petrino and think of offense, I always think of quarterback and wide receiver. I mean, because that's kind of like what it is. And so when you have a quarterback that looks like it's going to be Taylor Green, all the other quarterbacks besides KJ Jefferson stayed. And you think about how crazy that is in this modern day of college football. And also all the wide receivers stayed. That's another thing that blows my mind. Because I'm not saying that like all of them were terrible and needed to be kicked off the team, but just knowing you had Tesla, you had Armstrong, you had Broden, you had Stevens, you had Satania, these guys that probably would have liked to have moved on because they lost their wide receiver coach and they have a new offensive coordinator. But I think it's very telling of where they're at with Petrino. They're like, okay, this guy's proven himself. I want to find myself in that system because I know it's been featured. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I'm like, that to me was a really surprising thing is that they all stayed, where in most cases when you lose your coaches and you have a lot of turnover and then you're in a lame duck situation maybe with Coach Pittman, it's like, I'm out. But they stayed. So I think that's also kind of interesting to maybe that where is their belief in Petrino in this offense now going to click.
And then, Jordan Anthony is a receiver that got added to that room from Texas A&M. So he's like one of your few, I guess, new pieces, and he's familiar with Bobby, how he operates, and all that stuff. So he's gonna be splitting time with track.
Yeah, track and football.
It's good to have track athletes playing football again.
Absolutely. But yeah, I want to see if like Andrew Armstrong, he was great last year. He would make a next step because I've talked to him in the past. Like he's got a plan A to get to the league. He doesn't have a plan B. Like, and this is the year that he needs to kind of assert himself, be dominant. And then Isaac Tesla, like he was fall ball star last year, and it just didn't really translate throughout the year. So looking for those two guys to lead. And I'm going to go on record. Has anybody got the records? I'm going to put it down on the record.
I mean, I have
the 5 cameras and 5 mics that we got going on.
Davion Dozier is going to be my spring ball all-star.
I love that, dude.
I love that.
Davion Dozier. All right.
He super talented, 6'4", 203, got size for it. Played a little bit in the opener last year, caught a touchdown, and he's a guy that I wish that maybe would have seen more of last season. But the receiver groups, I'm big on receivers. You got to have feed the studs. And I think Davion Dozier, hopefully he'll make a step this spring.
Yeah,
I mean, just the continuity of the offense is a good. I mean, the offensive line is the big question mark, I guess, because that group was the big struggle last year, but. You guys have been around this offensive line more than I have even. Like, do you get the sense that there's a little bit of a brotherhood? Like, they actually seem to like each other. And, like, when we're around those guys, it seems like they're friends. And
I feel like Braun's doing a good job of...
He's doing a great job with it.
Great job of it.
Yeah, I mean, those are his brothers, really.
Those are his brothers. The team's 4-0. Those are his brothers. But seriously, though, like, I think this offense has a lot of continuity with that receiver group. You got some running backs back. I mean, the quarterbacks, you don't have your starter back, but there's some guys in the room, and obviously Petrino's been around the block a few times. The offensive line is the one group that doesn't have that continuity. But I think we all in this room and most of the fans feel a lot better about the group and just what they can do. And honestly, even from a camaraderie standpoint, I think that group's a lot closer. So I think, on paper, I get you're losing KJ Jefferson, you're losing Rocket Sanders. I think it's kind of hard to make an argument like, hey, how's Arkansas going to be better offensively? But I think that, we all agree last year was kind of a disaster, and I don't think either of those guys were put in a position to succeed. I think whoever it is at quarterback that we'll see. We all think it's going to be Taylon Green, but it's up in the air. We'll see what happens. Whoever it is going to be in a better position to succeed because of all those factors, though, I think.
Yeah, and, new look, new vibes along the offensive line with Eric Mateo. So I'm going to be really excited to see just what that interaction looks like, because the vibes were not great with that position group last year with Cody Kennedy. It was just significantly quieter over there than it was anywhere else on the field. And then, you mentioned the camaraderie with those guys and the chemistry, the brotherhood, whatever, with those offensive linemen. And look, like the offensive line, they stunk last year, but it wasn't like they were completely overmatched or overpowered or whatever. You saw what Bo Limmer just did at the combine. Like, those guys are strong. They were well put together. It looked like an SEC offensive line. They just didn't perform like one, and a lot of it was because they didn't have the continuity. And people think you just line up and block the dude in front of you, but it's not all about that. There's a ton that goes into it. And so I think they might have a little bit of a head start in terms of understanding each other and having good relationships where they can talk and communicate. And maybe that can take them to another level, because it doesn't matter who the quarterback is or the running back or the receivers or whatever. Like, you can't block, then, you're not going to move the ball. Yeah,
because even Petrino, when he was at Arkansas originally, they had solid offensive lines, but I wouldn't say that they were. I think Alvin Bailey was really good. I mean, we had Travis Swanson.
Guys.
Travis Swanson was really good.
You had like a Mitch Smothers, who was a young guy starting. Bray Cook, when he was young, he was starting. So you had like good pieces, but it was never like five guys all at the peak of their powers, kind of like Arkansas had in 2015.
My gosh, I think still Ray Dominguez is still getting a false start, man.
Yeah,
it's like him.
He loved that.
I think him, DeMarcus Love. But the point is like the offensive line was never elite, but it was always good enough. And I think that's what Arkansas's offense just needs to be under Petrino, is just good enough at every position. And so yesterday also, Sam Pittman was asked about, of course, Bobby Petrino. I don't know if you guys heard. He returned to Arkansas, used to coach here. But he was talking about him.
BMFP, they call him.
Yeah, if I wonder why, and why you can't say the name of it.
You remember
out loud,
right after we talked to Sam, I guess because Bobby got introduced like a day or two after that Duke game when Bobby came to Bud. Yeah. And Sam was joking with Bobby. They couldn't. We're joking like he couldn't figure out what BMFP stood for. I was like, "Capper, stop capping."
Yeah, you better know what that means. Come on now. But Pittman was asked about Petrino, and I think Razorback fans are really happy to hear what he had to say.
Well, I like all three of them. I like, and of course Bobby runs it. He runs the offense, but I think those three guys have helped us. Bobby's very organized, and it's his offense, and he's very comfortable with all the call. He went back because I think maybe when it was at A&M, some things, verbiage changed and all that kind of stuff. I said, oh, no. I wanted to come singing off your out of your mouth what you do, and you just put it in like you want it in, and then, I'll figure out the verbiage of it. And so he's doing great. And the guys that have come in have really bought into it. I think the wideouts are really excited about the entire offense are very excited about Coach Petrino being running the show.
So that's the thing I think, at least I wanted to hear, was that Petrino's running the offense, and there's no other reasons to think otherwise. Because Petrino mentioned it in his press conference when he was introduced, talking about A&M and the verbiage, and they had certain things that he did not like. And what did he say? He was like up till 3 a.m. in their first game, trying to figure out everything, and make
before a scrimmage.
Yeah, it was a scrimmage. So it's like, which I think is so absurd, because it's like, hold on a second, like, this is Bobby Petrino. This isn't some run of the mill crapperware. Like, this is a dude that actually knows what he's doing, and I know that was going to be the case with Pittman, where he's just like, hey, here's the keys. Because that's how Pittman is with his assistant coaches, sometimes to his detriment. But it's like, here's the keys, you run it, you coach it. But if that's the case, and where it's like, you use your verbiage, you use the terms, you do whatever it is you want to do, Bobby.
Singing off your mouth.
Which is, man, I can't wait to have those plays just singing off the mouth. Like, all of that. I think that would be something that's going to make this Arkansas offense better, but also that's what's going to make this offense go full Petrino, which is always a good thing, too.
I think that's a great point, because, you think about what Bobby was able to do last year with A&M, and we can dissect it all we want. You can go watch the film, you can do whatever, but I think we all know that wasn't really Bobby Petrino getting that full autonomy of the offense. I mean, when you're coaching under a guy like a Gus Malzahn or a Jimbo Fisher, a guy who likes to call plays, we've always seen that. It's like a little bit of a power struggle. They don't like to let go of it, even when they bring in a decorated offensive coordinator like Petrino. Sam Pittman, for all his pros and cons, I wouldn't say he's the biggest X's and O's guy, especially when it comes to like quarterbacking and like, play calling. I don't think he's never really called plays in his life, I don't think. So it's like, I don't think that's going to be a much of an issue. So I was glad to hear Pittman admit that. I mean, admit that like it's a bad thing, but I think it was cool to hear him say that. And I think that's a great point, that Bobby is going to get to do whatever he wants. So just from his enjoyment of being an offensive coordinator in the SEC, I think he enjoyed it last year, getting back in the league and game planning. He enjoyed it, but I think this situation at Arkansas is more suited to him because he gets to just #cook. Let him cook.
It's probably a good thing for Pittman too, because Petrino's so decorated. Like, you can just put your trust in him and let him do his thing, and it gives Sam the opportunity to be the game manager and decision maker, which is something else that he talked about in terms of going for it on fourth down and relying on analytics and not trusting his gut. And
more Sam-alytics.
Yeah, the Sam-alytics and everything. And so that's something he really had a hell of a time with last year. And he's aware. I like that he's self-aware, because he even said, hey, it didn't work what he was doing last year. So maybe, he's worried a little bit less about, what Petrino's got going on as compared to whatever it was Dan Enos was doing. And he can have a little bit better success with some of those decisions that he does have to make, whether it's, knowing when to call a timeout or send out your field goal kicker or go for it or not. Maybe that's something he can really put some focus on.
Sam needs a co-head coach.
Yes, he does.
I mean, and that's not even a knock on him. I mean, Ed Orgeron won a national title being in that same situation where he kind of needed to delegate a little bit. I think not having Barry Odom, who we know is a great bull rider,
correct,
it's been a big miss for them the last year. So I think that Sam probably realized that last year, like, I kind of needed that former head coach to be next to me, helping me out. And so I think Bobby helps in that regard.
And also to that point, like, people forget, and maybe not to the same element, but remember who Bobby Petrino had on his staff at Arkansas? He had John L. Smith coaching special teams. Now,
elite former head coach.
I mean, listen, best special teams Arkansas ever had. I'm being honest, but like a lot of that, and I remember Petrino even talking about it, he's like, I like having a former head coach to bounce things off of. So it's not like, Pittman's so incompetent, he has to have this. Lots of coaches do that. And especially, at Alabama, when Nick Saban was there, they were having analysts and interns that were former head coaches out the woodwork. So it's not a knock against Pittman. It's not a bad thing that he's having that, but it is something that Pittman needs. Like, Pittman has to have that and to help him out. And that's when, honestly, when they lost Barry Odom, you saw the detriment that was. If he truly relies on Petrino and leans into Petrino, this team, I'm not going to say it's coached by Petrino fully, but it's going to have a lot of different handprints from Petrino all over it too.
For sure. Yeah, and I don't think there will be any issues like if, last year the rolling the pocket thing was a fiasco.
Oh my gosh.
That was crazy.
We just didn't do it.
I think Bobby's going to handle all that, and I think Bobby's going to be receptive. Like, he's going to run the offense, but I think he's still going to get, like, Sam's going to be like, hey, I think we should, my opinion, we might run it here, but you do your thing, you make the call on it. I'm excited to see what it looks like. And it's going to take maybe a bit before that first scrimmage. Like, we're going to have to go through some kind of grind days before we get to the scrimmage, but I'm excited to see, when it's finally out there in the stadium for people to see just what it looks like, because I imagine it'll look quite a bit different than last year.
Yeah, I do too. But do you think Petrino ends up being in the booth, or is he like on the field?
People love asking about this. That's like their favorite topic ever.
I think it's so interesting because it's like, well, if it's just any coordinator, that's one thing. But I'm like, we're talking about Bobby Petrino here. Like,
I would imagine he'll be on the field.
I would think, but I think last year he was in the booth for A&M. So, but maybe that was because Jimbo didn't want anybody.
Honestly, whatever Bobby wants,
Bobby's going to get.
Yeah, and also I'm okay with that. Like, if he, because I mean, that's the fans that ask about it so much. No matter what answer, they talk themselves into it. They're like, oh, you know what? It is nice to have the aerial view. Nice to see the X's and O's from up. But then if they're down on the field, they're like, oh, need that personal connection. So it's like,
he needs to be able to see the urgency
in
my eyes. My quarterback does when I'm talking to him.
So it's like, you can talk me into whichever one, whatever. Like you said, whatever Bobby wants, he can get, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So looking at the position groups in general, and we'll just be here for a few minutes and kind of wrap up. And again, folks, this is pod of that nature, and we're going to be live streaming after the practice and scrimmage and giving you all of our overreactions and who's going to be the Heisman Trophy winner of this team.
Exactly.
But also looking at it from position groups, you get one. Which position group across the entire team and the entire field is going to be like the make or break for this team? Not saying which one's going to be bad or good, but just this position group's going to be the difference in how this team goes.
I don't know as of right now without seeing them first what that group is, but I'm really going to be paying attention to that linebacker spot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. That's
Because you've got right now, listen, Antonio Greer was a nice depth piece at times. Chris Paul, Jordan Crook, even a guy like Manny Powell, another depth piece who played special teams for you. He was a special teams rep guy.
Jaheim Thomas.
Yeah, Jaheim Thomas. That's a lot of production that you lost, a lot of snaps. And this year it looks like you're coming in with, Brad Spence, like him a lot, Carson Dean. Sam's talked highly of him in the past, but we haven't seen a whole lot of him. It's another special teams guy. Other than that, dude, it's Juju Pope, Alex Sanford, and Xavier Sori, the transfer from Georgia.
Who should be good, by the way.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
if him and Brad Spence, both those guys, I feel good about. But it's if that's your starting guys and you need those guys to stay healthy and you need those guys to play 70 snaps, I don't feel as great about that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely.
Yeah, I don't.
It feels like we go into either spring or fall always wondering about linebacker depth. And so after this spring ball, they're probably going to identify maybe this guy can be a 75 to 80 tackle player. Maybe we've got another one of those guys. Or maybe we've got an absolute stud maybe with Sori. We'll see. Always, I'll give the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise with Georgia transfers. But I think linebacker, they're probably going to be hitting the portal after spring to go try to get another big piece.
They have to. I think it's a huge red flag for this team right now. I mean, they're a rolled ankle away from Yurichek's kid or whatever being out there, taking snaps in a game. There's just no depth and there's no proven production that's coming back, and I really worry about that spot defensively. Offensively, I think it's got to be the offensive line. I mean, that's the key to everything. It doesn't matter what you have at the skill positions. If you can't block, you're in a tough spot. And they've got some new pieces that I'm excited to see what those guys bring to the table. And I know Pittman's excited about them too. We've seen some of those guys, so some optimism there. But you're also losing a lot, even though the line wasn't great last year. But a lot of SEC experience, and then even a guy like Andrew Chambly, who just no longer on the team. He started 8 games for you at tackle last year. And you don't have that to lean on either. So they're going to have to plug in a lot of new faces.
Did we determine whether or not his love for did we get a love for the game update after his tweet yesterday?
Yeah, what is this?
It might have been his love for Arkansas football because
I don't know.
That was weird.
I mean, Pittman said he lost his love for the game. Then he comes out directly and says, "We're not done yet," and posts his SEC All Freshman plaque from his truck, which I don't know why he took that picture from his truck, but go do what you got to do.
So which SEC school is he going to transfer
I couldn't
to?
tell if that was him declaring hey, I'm actually not done playing football, or what it is. I don't know, but I'll be honest,
because Cody Kennedy's there.
Maybe.
Maybe. Can we
Either
just
that
stop?
or Lane.
Can we stop this? Can we just stop the cryptic tweet nonsense?
Yes.
And just be like,
It's football season.
I remember Miles
That's how
Slusher
you
did
know.
that
So
when
stupid.
Hutch reported that Miles Slusher was no longer with the team. Miles Slusher was like, "Wow, y'all believe this?" And then Pittman after the game was like, "Yeah, he's off the team." And he has not been on the team since.
Listen, I've said this before to Curtis: guilty dog barks first.
Yep.
Yeah, and so look, I'm not saying Andrew Chambly's a liar, but why put out that tweet if I don't know. I mean, I would love for
Somebody's
more
a liar.
detail. Yeah, so it's are you outright disputing what Sam Pittman said,
Yeah.
or what? You gotta give us a little bit more than that. But
That's why
guys,
I
I'm gonna
hate
be honest with you. I'm kind of looking at that D line a little bit, and I feel a lot better about the D line than I do the linebackers because I think that first group that you have now, you can argue who the top 4 guys are, but I like the June Kaj guy from Albany, the All-American at the FCS level. You assume that guy's going to help you a little bit. Landon Jackson is obviously Landon Jackson, NFL player, legit dude. Cam Ball, I love
him.
He just seems like he's getting better and better. Cam Ball is like a microcosm of what you want your program to be like. You bring in a guy he was like a high 3-star, and you redshirt him as a freshman, but you get his feet wet. You play him a little bit as a redshirt freshman, and he kind of just works his way up. And now he's in a position where I feel like he's really going to help them a lot. Eric Gregory's been around for a while, so you feel good about him. Nico Davier, Kiwi Rose have both, helped. I like Nico a lot. Outside of that, that's 5 or 6 guys I just listed. who I feel pretty good about. But outside of that, there's just not any experience, not any production, not any guys that you know for a fact are going to help you. And so, look, I don't know how many you need to get through the SEC season. And I don't know if it's 8, if it's 10 or whatever. Coaches smarter than me can determine that. But I'm interested to see this spring of like who steps out. I mean, Ian Jaffrard is a massive human being who they like a lot. Maybe he takes that next step forward. Quincy Rhodes, oddly enough, did not redshirt last year. I don't know why he didn't redshirt. I think they botch redshirts a lot, this football coaching staff, but they seem to botch his because he was hurt half the year and they still didn't redshirt him. But if they didn't redshirt him, that means they think he's going to help. So does he take a little bit of a step forward? You've also got some just like random older guys like John Hill, who's been around for forever. Some other freshman pieces who like you don't want to count on those. But who from that bottom group is going to fill out and be those number 7 through 8 to 9 to 10? Like who's going to fill out the depth on the D-line room? Because you need a lot more than 5, which I feel like Arkansas has 5 for sure. You need a lot more than that. And I just don't think they're going to be able to do the thing where they're like, oh, we can rotate them all throughout the game and it's going to be great.
They might have to move some of those heavy running backs over there to the defensive line.
boys,
That's what they might have to do. So,
Yeah, the heavies.
Yeah.
Dominic Johnson, the linebacker.
There we go.
I mean, we've been flirting with that for years there. But, that running back group, man, I mean, Braylon Russell is 252 pounds. We thought that was a typo when we were looking at it yesterday.
We
were like, there's no
the
way.
about it.
No, yeah. And then Pittman was like, Braylon Russell, he's a big boy now. He's big now.
Yeah, no, he is big. What was he, 240 something, 250
They listed him at
He's
252.
252. Dominic
6'1",
Johnson's
252.
251.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The new kid from Utah is 235.
You better not go.
So.
Do not go down on first contact.
Big
I'd like to
Chicken
see-
has been a big hit in Fayetteville, it appears.
We know how people in this state felt about Rocket Sanders and his weight gain. So
Oh, yeah.
hopefully these
Yeah.
guys show a little bit better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
faster, stronger, better is what we're expecting.
Yes, sir.
But that's the way it is.
I told the guys the other day because we were talking about that comment Sam made about the running backs. I'm like, they basically got 6'1" Kiero Smalls in the backfield at running back right now. Just
I was going
bowling
with
ball type
Jatashin
guys.
Beecham. I don't know if you guys remember Jatashin Beecham.
That's a name, right?
Yeah, that is a name.
Yeah.
Gosh.
He was a running back at Petrino's, I think, final year. They called him Big Tex, but he was literally like 6'1" to 275 pounds. He was a running back.
Petrino does like those big boys that,
He's a big
that carry
boy
the
guy.
ball. The
Yeah, he's
Cody Walkers, the Broderick Greens,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cody Walker played for 9 Arkansas coaches. Did y'all know that? 9 different ones, and Petrino was one of them.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's facts. I
Yeah.
don't even think
Look
we need
it
to
up.
look it up. Yeah.
I
Well,
think it's a good thing Augustov's up to 212 pounds. He seemed like he was
He's the little guy.
light
Yeah.
last year,
Yeah.
right? Like 6'2", 212. That's
good size.
He was
jumps
starting to
out
bite a
little
little
bit
down
to
the
me.
stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is our first edition of Pod of That Nature. But listen, we got a lot more coming up because we're going to be doing this a lot because football's here. We are excited about spring. Can't wait to talk about guys that are going to be awesome in spring and you won't ever hear about them again in the fall. It's going to be great. So be sure to subscribe. And it's football driven, and we're going to have a live stream tomorrow after practice, recapping all of that too. So subscribe to it, like it, do all the stuff you need to do to make it worthwhile.
Take a
and
little
supporting
early
us.
lunch break tomorrow, like a
Yeah,
10:45,
something like that.
11 lunch break.
Yeah, and we'll make it happen for you. But we appreciate you all listening in and subscribing. We'll see you guys tomorrow.